folks, I'm going to just share for those of you who are not very conversant with what we're talking about in terms of India Republic Day. So I just share a little bit of information. So India celebrates its Republic Day on the 26th of January every year. It's to mark the day when the Constitution of India came into effect in 1950. And it's a national holiday and it's celebrated with great enthusiasm and patriotic fervor, across the whole country. And the main Republic Day celebration usually takes place in the national capital in Delhi, New Delhi, where a grand parade is held at Rajpath and featuring a display of India's cultural and military heritage. The President of India was also the chief guest of the parade, unfurls the national flag, and the national anthem is played. And the parade also includes floats representing different states from India, showcasing their cultural heritage. So, India.
A wonderful topic, very close to my heart. India, mother of spirituality. I'm not sure if many of you have heard this song, from Purab or Paschim. Hai preet jahan ki reet sada main geet wahan ke gata hoon. Bharat ka rehne wala hoon, Bharat ki baat sunata hoon. Such a wonderful song, and I think it's got a spirit of India, that where the tradition, it's a tradition of love and acceptance of everyone. And that is where the India comes from. And we had this wonderful, gem of spirituality coming from India, a mother of spirituality. Swami Vivekananda said, India is a source of spirituality for the whole world. If India dies, the spirituality goes with that. So India is so important for the spiritual health of the world. And when Swami Vivekananda reached back India after, visit of America, he said, now India is like a pilgrimage, is so close to my heart. And what is so special about India? Let's find out in today's session. Vijay Bhai, over to you. What is so special about India? Why did Swami Vivekananda say it's a source of spirituality for the whole world?
I think that there's one thing I must say. I'll give you my own example. When I was young, I hadn't been to my own home state in Kutch for about 10 years. And then when I went there, I just felt totally different. There is something strange about India in the sense that you just feel the spiritual vibe when you go there. I remember Swami Vivekananda, in his biography, said that after spending, as he mentioned, in America for so many months, and then he said, even the very dust of India is now so sacred to me, I can't wait to go back. I think the key thing is this, the whole Indian ethos has been the idea of aspiration of man. And as Jay Bhai keeps on reminding us, the resolution of the human condition. It's in India that particular kind of angle of thought has taken place. Because if you look at many other belief systems in the world, it's basically the idea of you believe in this God. It's a characteristic policy. Either you believe in it, if you don't, I kind of beat you, right? And they're very communal in this idea. But India is very unique in that sense because it actually aspires for man to go to a spirituality. And it reminds me also of one of the sayings of Chanakya, the great teacher of economics in Takshashila. And he also mentioned that, it's only in India that a man can become a god. Yeah. So just through sheer deeds and through sheer, meditation and spirituality can actually become a god. And that is what is really special of India. Everyone has a potential to become a god. And I mean, the other thing I must say, you can see some very, very fundamental differences with other beliefs in the world. If you notice in India, everything is divine. River is a mother, mountain is also, divine. Even a stone is divine, a tree is divine. I know even in my village, we have trees in the village square and they put this nice red string around it and people go put water in it. Why? Because India sees divinity everywhere. And it's not like something, so in effect, it makes you feel that actually the whole world, the whole idea of divinity comes alive in India. And that's something very unique. As Jay Bhai mentioned, there is no idea of, trying to force people to a particular belief. People believe as what suits them best. And that's the best way to make spiritual, progress. Respect everybody for their own beliefs and how they progress. Don't try and force it on somebody else and say, either you believe this or you burn in hellfire or all these other load of nonsense, sorry to say. But in this, India is so unique. And you can feel that vibe when you go to India. So it's very special like that. Sita?
Yeah, sorry, my lighting's a bit funny. I'm in the car today. Yes, so I mean, I completely agree with Vijay. There's something incredibly special about India, and Dad often says that in a way, India was very lucky because it was very temperate conditions. It was very mild. We had, free, beautiful resources of nature to utilize, and we weren't fighting with the forces of external nature, which is what you get in Europe in a lot of colder countries. People had to focus their energies outwards, whereas with countries like India, we had lovely warm weather, we had beautiful fresh clean water, we had all the beautiful resources, so we didn't have to fight with nature external. We were able to focus our energies inwards, because the whole point of our sort of human experience is trying to make sense of our human condition. Who are we and what is our place in the world? And when you look at the sort of external world, you think, there are all these forces out there like wind and fire and all of that. And we're sort of battling against that. But we didn't really have that in India so much as it is in other countries like in Europe and all of that. So we had the luxury to say, who am I? And rather than looking outwards, we were able to look inwards. And we had this amazing journey of introspection. And what we're discovering, which is what Dad dedicated his life for, was this idea that actually what we are discovering through all this incredible scientific discoveries in terms of quantum and consciousness, and through this study of the external world, we're coming to the same conclusion as to what the ancient rishis of India had discovered through their journey of introspection and meditation. The insights that we gained were absolutely incredible, and they sit very much in line with modern cosmology, modern neuroscience, modern physics. So I think it's absolutely incredible. The power of the mind, the power of introspection is something that we definitely can't underestimate. It's something beautiful. It's not just some fluffy, airy, fairy dream-like state that, atheists would claim it is, because the conclusions are the same. And, even the crassest atheist would have to say, look, there is a real synergy here. So I think it's really beautiful that we were able to discover it without all of this gadgets and gizmos of the external world. We were able to discover something amazing.
So wonderful to hear, Sita Ben, Vijay Bhai. India is so special. And the fact is, the pluralism is so ingrained in Indian psyche. Growing up in India, I have seen my grandma passing by a kind of a dargah, and she would say, let's bow down here, and we would go and bow down. And this is seen even in Ajmer. Now if you go, there are many Hindus who go to this Ajmer Sharif, and they would offer each other the ancient Christians, persecuted Syrian Christians. They found a home in India. Jews persecuted came to India and found a home. Same again, Parsi. And this is so special. You see such a special world welcoming everyone with open arms and not letting everyone continue their religious tradition without imposing any tax or any rules whatsoever. It's so special. Vijay Bhai, what's your take on it? How is pluralism so fundamental to Indian psyche?
Oh, you're on mute, Vijay Bhai.
Thank you. So I think, Manish Bhai, you're absolutely right. I mean, the idea of pluralism is actually ingrained into the psyche of every Indian in sense. It's not only that we are ingrained, it's part of a historical tradition, ancestral tradition. It's been the case for thousands of years in India. I mean, it is so, I think sometimes we actually don't realize the value of it. It's got tremendous value. It means that you don't have to follow somebody or live in fear that if I don't follow some particular branch, I'll be in trouble. And that's the biggest freedom you can actually get, right? I mean, you can imagine all the guys, all the ones you mentioned, all the people who came to India, the early Christians were persecuted. The earliest Jews, when General Titus destroyed the Jewish temple, they came to India as well, and they got refuge because India has always accepted that every person will see spirituality differently, and they'll follow the path which suits them best. And we've always been accepting. It's not even that. I mean, you'd be surprised. Even in the time of World War II, we had a situation that the Polish people came there as well. You'd be surprised. The Polish community in Gujarat as well who came. So they didn't have to live in fear and practice whatever they believe they practice. So it's been a tradition of India, primarily because we believe in the idea of pluralism. So pluralism is tremendously powerful. I would say personally, any religion who says that if you don't follow my path, you're going to burn in hellfire, think twice. But this is what has been used around the world. It's a very means of control, right? You control people. I mean, people do all the time in class. If you don't do as they say, I'll beat you with a stick. And thank God India did not take that path. They said, everybody go follow your path. And that's a very, very kind of I would say it's almost like a human right in my view. Very special idea that India has. Sita?
Yeah, so I mean, this idea of pluralism is so ingrained in our thinking that, you know, it just feels like the most natural thing to have a variety. The Western countries are very good at their sort of political democracy, their social democracy, but I think that's what we sort of specialize in, is this idea of spiritual democracy. It's so incredibly ingrained in our system that, you know, any individuals who are sort of persecuted, any individuals from other nations, other religions, are happily able to sort of synergize into the Indian sort of population. And they were never sort of forced to convert or change their religion or anything. They were not ever told to compromise their beliefs. And it reminds me very much, Dad often used this example of the Zoroastrians. And I think there was an example of the king, I think it was somewhere in Gujarat, and he said, you know, to the Zoroastrian people, why don't you sort of synergize with us in the same way that milk and sugar synergize together and you can't even tell them apart, but they make the whole thing much nicer. So I think we really recognize that bringing in people from other religions is actually very enriching. It's actually very beautiful because it shows the magnanimous nature of spirituality. It's not something narrow-minded, something that you sort of restrict to only this particular narrow route. We say actually spirituality is majestic, it's beautiful, and there are so many ways of becoming spiritual.
That is so wonderful to hear, Sitaben. Just to remind viewers, political democracy was also there in ancient India. There were, democratic states like Vaisali and others in times of Buddha or before that. So the democracy where they were electing their own leader, and it was a democratic tradition in a way. So even the political democracy was there. And as we know, the Vedas, Rig Veda saying, Ekam Sat Vipura Bahuda Vadanti, the pluralism, wonderful message is there. And so did India invented the numbering systems, backbone of science. And all the progress was made in ancient India, in medicine, and in arts, culture, sculpture, and numbering system is what makes today's science possible. Sitaben, are you there for this question? How did, is India also the source of modern science? Vijay, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the thing is, one thing to keep in mind is that India, I mean, it was an endeavor, a spiritual endeavor. Science or mathematics was seen as spiritual endeavors. It's endeavors which actually enrich you. It was not just something you do because you want to make more money or you want to build less. It was enriching. That's why if you notice one thing, as you mentioned, Manish, by the idea of building sculptures, that is a skill was used not just to build beautiful images, to build images that are spiritual. So most of the knowledge gained from the sculpture, you notice, is actually was used to build huge temples to enhance people's spirituality. I mean, as a matter of fact, if you look at, we have the 4 Vedas, And then on top of that, we got the 4 Upavedas, they're called. Upavedas are the supplementary text. We have something called the Gandharva Veda for dancing, like that. The Dhanur Veda, which is for martial arts, warfare kind of stuff, Then you got Sthapatya, which is for architecture, and Ayurveda. And they are called Veda as well because they are divine knowledge too. So in effect, all this knowledge, mathematics, science, even if you look at the works of, say, Aryabhat or Bhaskaracharya, and if you look at their works, even the way they write in a spiritual kind of tone, mathematics in a spiritual, it sounds so beautiful that even science is seen as a spiritual endeavor. The writing as well is actually spiritual. And that is so special about India, that even every endeavor, everything we see is a spiritual endeavor. So I'm not surprised at the idea of numbering, all these great discoveries of mathematics will come from India. They're all seen as a very endearing endeavors, not just for material gain, for personal spiritual progress too. Sita?
I completely agree. I mean, if you look at any sort of aspect of life, if you look at words, or if you look at numbers, or if you look at symbols, they're all ways that we try and get a handle on reality and try and make sense of the world around us. And actually what we discover is behind all of these symbols and numbers and words is the same spirit percolating through everything. And I think Dad often said there's this philosopher called Wittgenstein, and he said the more sort of numbers and words and symbols that you are able to understand, able to grasp, the finer your grasp of reality. So in a way, like having this huge variety of words and numbers and symbols and being able to understand them helps us to get a better handle on reality. And hopefully by getting a better handle on reality, we can see beyond the physical, we can see beyond the material, and see that it's actually the same spirit that's percolating behind everything. And if you think about it, all of these symbols and numbers and words are so incredibly important in helping us to get a handle on the infinite. And we have this, the Sanskrit word is pratik, symbols, because they are things which help us go towards the idea of spirituality. And we often think, symbols are something that are just sort of, we allocate it to the realm of religion and it's just a religious thing, but we use symbols all the time. We use symbols as like pi, we use infinity, we use adding and multiplying and subtracting. They're all symbols to help us understand how the world works. So I think the more symbols, the more words and numbers, the better. And I think that's really reflected in our approach of spiritual democracy. If we can have a richer way of understanding this very sort of ethereal subject, all the better. And I know Swami Vivekananda often said, the many more paths there are, even better. It's something to celebrate, for humanity to celebrate, because then there is more field of choice. There is more variety for us to be able to pick and choose the path which suits us the most. So rather than being a source of conflict, we can look at all of these different spiritual paths as being ways of enriching our understanding of spirituality and the world.
So wonderful to hear, Sita-Ben. Talking about different pathways, Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, all originating in India. And world hardly knows about some of these traditions. Jainism, hardly anyone knows. And when we see Western media, it's hardly portrayed these religions. It's like all these wonderful things, even the Sanskrit is like mother of all European languages. Our temples like Ajanta Ellora, a temple carved from the one whole rock. Such marvels of the world that is visible everywhere. And you see, all these BBC documentaries on ancient Egypt, but India completely ignored. Are we seeing that Western media is purposely trying to keep the India in the back burner and not allowing, giving it the full dignity, the recognition it deserves, Sita-Ben?
I think it can definitely be argued that that is the case. And because, Indians are generally quite mild-mannered people, we don't go out there and become very aggressive or very violent. So I think people sometimes take advantage of that. And also the fact that it's in our nature to be so incredibly open. And when you look at other religions around the world, they're maybe not quite so open as Hinduism, and all the Indian religions are. And it causes a bit of an issue for them because they say, why are you so open? Why are we not so open? So I think in a way, it's kind of kept on the back burner. It's not given the prominence and the dignity that it should be given. But I think the world is changing a lot now, and people are looking for more ways to become spiritual without the tops and tails of religion. And I think the beautiful thing about Hinduism is that we are not fixated on books. We're not fixated on scriptures and rituals and thinking of God with form and doing all of these very, being very stickler about these things. We have this idea of just being spiritual for the sake of being spiritual through, any sort of disciplined human endeavor. And that is part of Hindu teaching, that is part of Hindu philosophy. So I think people will start sort of exploring different religions, but also go beyond that and say, actually, I don't want the baggage which comes with the idea of religion. I'd rather just be spiritual. And I think, there was this survey which was done recently, the Social Attitude Survey, and it showed that, the number of people who follow or believe in a religion is dropping. But out of those people who are saying that they're not, they don't want to have anything to do with religion, there's a growing number of people who are saying, actually, we are spiritual without the tops and tails of religion. And I think that's really where the world is headed now. And Hinduism is we're beating our drum because we're yes, we've been saying that for so long. You can be spiritual without the tops and tails of a religion. You don't need to relate to God as a personality whatsoever. Just think of yourself and everyone around you as divine. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So hopefully we can try and subvert what the mainstream media is saying and doing, and people will try and discover these different ways, because we're not so reliant on mainstream media anymore. We've got social media, we've got so many different avenues of understanding spirituality. And I think we can definitely make use of that in trying to sort of get around the mainstream sort of biases, which are very obvious. Vijay bhai?
I think there's one important point that Sita just mentioned, the idea of mainstream media. I think, Manishma, part of the problem is not that people are adverse to Indian, Indian ideas or Indian, sightseeing or whatever. I think generally people around the world are quite okay. If you tell them, they'll say, yeah, it's worth exploring. But the media is a big issue because people tend to follow what media says. Plus, also, I think also in India, for the last 1,000 years, there's been such a narrative being set that, India is only Taj Mahal. But actually, we know, Manish bhai, I know that the temples are far more beautiful than Taj Mahal. If you go to Chinnakeshwar temple in South India, the work of the chiseler, the Indian chiseler is like stunning. Or Ajanta Ellora you mentioned, right? But the thing is, I think now it's changing. India is going out and saying, look, guys, we have this wonderful stuff. And social media is playing a big part. We have amazing, recently decided, I think a 51-day boat tour, which goes to River Ganga, goes to Brahmaputra, and all that stuff. So India is now marketing. I mean, it's really strange. I went to, when did I go to holiday recently? I went to Lanzarote, right? I went to holiday with my kids 2 years ago. And they went to this popular tourist site. It was like a mountain. It's not really much, it's just like a hill with a nice view of 2-3 islands. And the way they marketed it was so good. Everybody's going there, wow. I said, come on, in India, even just one temple can beat this particular little site. But the thing is, we haven't done that kind of marketing, or the media has been so far not been focused. But I think partly India has to make an effort. So look, we have all this stuff to see. And I'm pretty sure people in the world are not biased in such. They will come and see it. But India has to showcase itself. And that's now happening. It wasn't the case before, for whatever reason. And then if you showcase it, then I think it will change. And I think it is changing now. People want to go to India to see the amazing, temples, amazing, natural sites, the national parks. So it's going to change. And hopefully things will improve in that area.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
What an interesting topic now. When I was looking up the topic of spiritual democracy, it gave me some sort of a definition that it refers to the integration of spiritual principles and values in the functioning of a democratic society. And in particular, in context of India, it refers to the way in which the country's spiritual traditions, particularly Hinduism, has shaped its democratic values and practices. But, I have another way of looking at it. Spiritual democracy is like we were talking here. You can have the concept of not believing in God, believing in God with a form, believing in God without a form, believing in God as a principle, and a variety of other various shades of believing in yes or no, or your own flavor. As Jeba used to say, pick your own path, but it's your own journey. So that to me is spiritual democracy, allowing you the freedom to choose your own path without being defined or boxed in by where you are brought up as maybe you're born a Hindu, you're born something else, some other tradition you follow, but you have a choice as you grow and you make up your own mind which path you want to follow. So that to me is spiritual democracy. But I have a set of 10 questions. Now it's India Republic Day, so we're going to talk about Hinduism and India and how it has helped shape the country as over the years. So I'm going to do a rapid fire style of questions. I'll start with Vijay Bhai. Vijay Bhai, how has Hinduism influenced the development of democracy in India?
Oh, it's a lot. I think as Manish Bhai just now mentioned, the Vaishali is one kingdom. There's quite a few kingdoms where they had the idea of, they had a panel of, leaders and people who actually elect them. So it has been there in ancient time in India. So India, even ironically, even in the political scene, you'd be surprised. India had many different ways to run a state, or in that one was like run by kingdom, run by a queen. There was some metrical systems where women run the little countries or whatever. So India had a wide variety of political systems as well. You'd be surprised. So I think that idea has trickled down. So for India, because we already have the idea of spiritual democracy, it wasn't that hard to pick up the idea of political democracy. And you would be surprised, if you look at the newspapers since independence to now, Western press especially, India is going to break apart. It's going to break apart. They can't live with so many languages. If Europe can't be one with many languages, like in Europe, we have Germany, with German-speaking people, Dutch. And so India will break up. It cannot match because Europe is all scattered. It won't work. But ironically, India has worked because despite having diverse religious, languages, religious beliefs, because the ethos of plurality and allowing people to follow their own path kind of automatically, psychologically prepares you for the idea of democracy. Political democracy is the same thing, right? You don't agree with some views, but you live with them. You don't just fight and be separate. So in a way, the whole psyche of Hinduism has helped to make India a successful democracy.
Fabulous. Sitaben, over to you for the next question, which is, can you give some examples of how Hindu spiritual leaders have advocated for non-violence and peaceful coexistence in society?
So we're very lucky. We've got so many individuals, spiritual individuals throughout the ages who have come and sort of tried to imbibe this idea of spirituality and present it to the world. And obviously the one that pops into my head, first of all, is the idea of Mahatma Gandhi, because he is one of those individuals who tried to merge spirituality and politics. And he tried to imbibe the sort of Hindu philosophy of, trying to show ahimsa, non-violence, to everybody around him, but in a way that can really make sure that we are not trampled on, make sure that our dignity is not compromised. So we've got individuals like Mahatma Gandhi, we've got Dayanand Saraswati, we've obviously got personalities like Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, who have all made different kind of contributions to the world, essentially. So we are an incredibly lucky nation in the fact that we are so enriched by all of the sort of teachings of these individuals, which can really help make the world a better place.
Awesome. Manish Bhai, one question for you. How has the principles of tolerance, diversity, inclusivity been practiced in Hinduism, and how has it helped shape in the Indian society?
Yes, principle of tolerance and acceptance is in the Indian psyche, and that's it's been there for so long. Even recently, there was a Swaminarayan temple attack. Pramukh Swami, the leader of BAPS, came out and appeal for peace, and let's not fight amongst each other. Let's be peaceful. Let's accept, and let's move on. And this is so wonderful to see. We have been, plural by nature, and we have been accepting of all different religious traditions, and we believe in peaceful coexisting. And this is seen all over the world. Wherever Hindus have gone, they have been appreciated for their contribution all over the world. And this is visible, quite visible everywhere. Yeah, Nisit bhai.
Wonderful. So it is about maturing of this way of life, and that brings me to the next question for Vijay bhai, which is how has Hinduism contributed to the diversity and pluralism in India? Manish bhai just touched upon that.
Yes, I think in India, I guess because as we discussed earlier, the idea of accepting that there are many different ways to make spiritual progress, in a way, allows humanity to find their own path. I mean, it is very natural. No matter how hard we try to bring people to one set of beliefs, the human nature is such that eventually they go separate ways. If you notice one thing, even take example of Hindu communities, if you get a community that's really big, they break into two parts. It's just natural. That's how humanity is. In a sense, it's good because India, the whole ethos of India is the Hinduism believes that we can have many ways to make spiritual progress. Not only that, we have four major pathways of moksha. Idea of karma, bhakti, jnana, and the idea of Rajya. So even in that, we have different pathways, and they're all valid pathways. So people are given the option to use whatever pathway they want, and that in itself creates the idea of Hinduism in a way encourages diversity of beliefs in that sense.
Fabulous. So in India, we've talked sometimes how, for example, Hinduism is not taught in schools and is going towards a secular method. But Sitaben, can you help me understand that what role Hinduism has played in the development of India's economy and society? Because despite not being taught in schools officially, we are still a very spiritual / religious lot.
Yes, no, it's very true. I mean, I think it's really embedded in us the fact that everything and everyone around us is divine. I think that's something that's really part of Indian thinking. The fact that we revere trees and plants and everyone around us is really, really important. The thing is, however, the theory is one thing, but then the practice is another. And Dad said many times, the gap between the haves and have-nots in India is vast. But I think hopefully as time is progressing and, the economy is growing and the fact that women are sort of liberated in the sense that they are not stuck in the kitchen and looking after children anymore, they can go out and contribute to the economy. Hopefully this theory will start becoming more of a practice. The fact that there is equality between different genders, there is this ability to say that actually everyone is divine. We shouldn't have this idea of the caste system, which has been sort of infecting Indian society for so many hundreds of years. How can you say on the one hand that you are a divine nation, everyone is divine, and on the other hand you trample on the lowest castes? It's completely atrocious. And it's really good that India is now awakening to the idea that yes, everybody is divine, and it's sort of infiltrating into the politics of the country. So we have to be very grateful for that.
Superb. Now, they say that you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So society is more than just economics. We're looking at culture, and we're looking at things like, for example, moral values. And so Manish bhai, the question for you is, how has Hinduism helped to shape the cultural and moral values of the Indian society today?
Yes, not just the Indian society, the Indian culture has spread to all of Southeast Asia, Pakistan as well. It's culturally Hindu. And if you go visit these places, the Hindu culture is there visible. I'm not sure what to say more. Vijay bhai?
No, I absolutely agree. I think that in a way, I agree with you as well, Manish. Yeah.
Super. So the next question, Vijay bhai, for you is that, Sitaben mentioned about the caste system. There was also women's equality issues, and there were many other things that were maybe in today's context of today's society, we may not see as very acceptable. So how do you think Hinduism has helped to address the issues of social inequality and injustice of the past?
I think, I think the good thing about Hinduism, it actually moves on and it learns. It's not stuck in the past. I know many acharyas today, many gurus today who are actually encouraging the idea of breaking down the idea of, discrimination based on the idea of varna, and they're fighting against that quite hard. All the gurus I've met, they're saying this should stop. And I know, like my own father's Gurukul, they've actually set up centers where they actually interact with the Dalits. They actually do havans with them. So you have to get them involved. So there's a lot of practice taking place now. So in many ways, one thing, for some reason, there's a very big push on the basis of media against this Indian saying Indian is a caste system. What they forget, actually, Europe was not different just 100 years ago. Not even far back. Just listen to me. It reminds you of some of the works. So I think it was Jung, I believe, Carl Gustav Jung, who said that we have the nobles, the knights, the merchants, and the serfs. So it was no different in Europe. So when they trumpet, they're saying India is no different. But I think key things like education, the work of the spiritual leaders changes society. And India is changing very fast. And I'm pretty sure the next 50, 30, 40, 50 years, this idea of the caste discrimination will totally go. Because in the cities, half of the people in India now marry somebody outside their caste. It's already happening, right? So it's going to change. I think the thing is that stick pretty much become too old to beat Hinduism. But the good thing is the gurus are not sticking. They're saying, look, yes, we accept, and we should work to change the society. And they're working very hard. I know a lot of people in some of the Hindu movements as well go in the tribal places, in the remote forest, and sit with them and try and uplift them, build schools. The one good example is the Anandamayi Ma tradition. They have built schools in Madhya Pradesh for the Adivasi, the forest people, who are kind of seen as very low status, and bring them up. So it's happening all over India. So I think it'll change. Yeah.
Amazing. So, we talked about how Hinduism has helped shape the country, how it has helped shape society. Now we come down to a question for Sitaben, which is, how does Hinduism approach the concept of individual rights and freedoms in relation to the greater good of the community? So there are so many things, like, we believe in the concept of tithing, karma. And there's so many other concepts that help us as an individual and with the greater community around us. But please do share.
That's a really, really vast topic for sure. Obviously we have this philosophy that everyone is divine, but we're sort of stuck in this body and mind complex, and we have karma, and we kind of do certain actions, we think certain things, we say certain things, which have an impact in the future. So all of our thoughts and words and actions have an impact on not just our own karma, but also on everyone else as well. So everyone's minds are interacting with everyone else's minds, and it's an incredibly sort of complex setup. But I think what's incredibly important is the fact that we recognize that it's the same spirit percolating through all of us, and that can really make a big difference in helping us make decisions which are very ethically and morally quite blurry. So, when it comes to issues around abortion and euthanasia and very, very difficult circumstances that people come across in their everyday lives, these sort of spiritual teachings can help to give us some kind of guidance. And I think the beautiful thing about Hinduism is that we say, actually, you are divine, so let your conscience be your guide in that particular circumstance. You can never whitewash any of these ethical and moral issues. You are divine, you make that decision, you are empowered to make that decision, and whatever you feel is right is the right decision. You have to follow your heart. So in that sense, it's very empowering, it's a beautiful message, and in those circumstances where you may otherwise feel lost, spirituality can sort of hold our hand and say, look, here is a possible solution. Remember, you are the spirit. Remember, you are divine. And any decision you do for the good of your family, the good of the community, is the right decision because you're operating with your heart.
Superb. What a wonderful discussion we've been having, folks. Please remember to put your questions in the comments area, either on YouTube or on Facebook. We have a little bit of time. Manish Bhai, I'm going to ask you one last question to wrap this up, which is, how is Hinduism adapting to the challenges and the opportunities of the modern world, such as globalization and technological advances?
Yes, Hinduism has been adapting really well with the modern world, and we have not, wonderful things. We have not been stuck in rut. We've been changing with times, and most Hindus have adopted the Western clothes and Western style of fashion, but We remain truly Indian Hindus, but the culture, the tradition is so strong. The Hinduism is with coming of the social media, all these wonderful messages, the Vedas, the beautiful temples of India, the languages, Sanskrit, all these things are coming to fore, and it's being available for everyone to see. So I think as a Hindus, we have, with the modern world, we have spread around the world, and with us, we have taken our culture, our food, our language, and everything, and it's being seen everywhere in the world, and that's a wonderful thing. It can only improve. It's gonna get better and better, I think.
Fabulous. Thank you all to my panel here of experts for answering these questions. It just helps us understand, the topic much, much better. From what you've mentioned, I see some advantages and maybe some disadvantages of spiritual democracy. And so let me just try and recap these from what I understood. So one of the benefits of spiritual democracy is it places an emphasis on moral and ethical values. And by doing that, it helps to create a more just and compassionate society within us. It also encourages peaceful coexistence. By promoting values such as nonviolence and tolerance, we can foster a society where different groups of people can coexist peacefully and with mutual respect. It also promotes inclusivity. So spiritual democracy values diversity and inclusivity, which can help ensure that all members of society have a voice and are represented. And finally, I think it encourages critical thinking, because a spiritual democracy can encourage individuals to question and reflect on their beliefs and actions, which can then lead to personal growth and development. Now, there may be some disadvantages. I can think of stuff like maybe potential for conflict. So if you have different groups, spiritual groups that are competing in beliefs and values, can lead to some conflict and division. There's the risk of religious maybe fundamentalism, where if it is to impose one set of views over society, may restrict individual freedom. And then there's the risk of ignoring secular concerns. So spiritual values are good, but not to the point where they ignore secular concerns such as economic development, public health, and education. And the final thing is it could lead to reinforcing inequality in social society, basically, because without proper check and balance, you could potentially be marginalizing certain groups. So what an interesting topic, once again, to discover. Manish bhai, I'm going to leave it back to you to head over with the general Q&A. I'm going to pass you a couple of questions that the viewers have asked. And if we have time to answer them all, we can do it before 3 o'clock, or we can run over a couple of minutes if you wish to.
Thank you, Nishit bhai. I just want to wrap this over. There is, wonderful spiritual democracy we have in India, and it's going strong as possible. And with Narendra Modi ruling, we have a Hindu leader as well. How do we protect and progress forward onwards? There is, as Vijay bhai, Nishit bhai was saying, there is a drawback as well. Being open means you are open to all the challenges as well and all the negative things as well. How do we move forward with this, Seethaben?
So I think the important thing to recognize is that, the downside, we have to recognize the downside. And the downside is that it can appear like a very sort of scattered initiative, spirituality, because you're like, oh, this goes, and then you're inclined to think that anything goes. But actually, Hinduism is not saying that anything goes. You can't just kind of invent a religion and say, hey, I've made a new religion, I've made a new sectarian movement. It doesn't work like that. They have to be tried and tested means, basically. And that's why I think the personality of Sri Ramakrishna is so incredibly important on the world stage now, because because he wasn't just saying theoretically, oh, all these paths are equally true. He actually experienced them for himself. All the various sectarian movements within Hinduism, he was able to experience and try them and test them and say, yes, they come to the same conclusion. And same with other world religions, he was able to do the same. So it's not a case of anything goes. It's a case that there are a variety of different ways. We just have to make sure that we are recognizing the ones that are valid, the ones that are true. And it's not a case of just inventing anything and it's all willy-nilly, everything goes. It's not that. They have to be reconciled through an individual who is able to experience all of them and say, yes, they all lead to the same destination. Vijay bhai?
I think, Manish bhai, it's a very important question. I think how do you progress Hinduism without the negative? Well, you can't avoid the negative, unfortunately. That's human nature. You'll have some people who see the negative, some see positive. But nevertheless, we have to move forward because now at last, I think people are getting aware of their own heritage. And because Indian government at the moment is more conducive towards allowing people to explore their own heritage, or Hindu heritage, basically. So I think things will only get better. But yes, we have to keep in mind that we have to keep positive about it. And whatever takes us away, far away, not to get too much stuck in negative reporting, negative media, just try and ignore it and move forward. And that's the best way to defeat negative ideas, is to ignore them. That hurts them more than anything else. Just move forward. Yeah.